Hi, my name is Ivana Milevska and I am the president of Bardzo, Ladnie Foundation. I would like to invite you to another webinar in a series titled Integration Through Culture. During each of the meetings, our chosen theme of Polish culture is explored by our guests, experts from Poland and Ireland. I would also like to remind you that Bardzo Ładnie is a non-for-profit organization. Therefore, all your support is very important to us. Find out more about us on our website and follow us on social media. More about Integration Through Culture project under hashtag ITC 2020.
Without the further delay, let's just start about our webinar today. So today we are moving into the realm of visual arts and we will talk about Polish illustration, in particular about Polish children's book illustration that is making waves internationally for last 20 years and is regularly recognized and awarded at many industry events. We've got fantastic guests tonight, and they will show us and talk about work of many great Polish illustrators and their standing in the international market, and also how do they benchmark against it. So today we are really excited that we had with us tonight Margaret Anne Suggs, who is lecturer at Ballyfermot College of Further Education, where she founded the illustration course, and also a director of EB Ireland. Margaret is herself an award-winning illustrator and author of illustration to well-known series about Piggy of Hout. She will have a conversation with Dr. Anita Wincencjusz-Patyna, art historian and critic. Anita is an assistant professor at the Eugeniusz Geppert Academy of Art and Design in Wrocław. She's also a member of Polish section of EB and president of the jury on many book contests in Poland. She's an editor-in-chief of Captains of Illustration, 100 Years of Children's Books from Poland, and absolutely outstanding anthology of Polish illustration that was just released in English a couple of weeks ago. After their conversation, we'll have a short artist spotlight and we'll be joined by Aga Grandowicz, who will tell us about her practice as an illustrator. Aga is a multi-award winning art director, graphic designer, and wildlife illustrator. Her first book, created together with Rob Maguire, Dr. Hibernica Finch's compelling compendium of Irish animals, it's a little tongue twister, was shortlisted for the Irish Book Award 2018, Literacy Ireland Children's Book Award 2019, and won Aga the Honor Award for Illustration in CBI's Book of the Year Award 2019. So we are very looking forward to hear from them, and I'm gonna pass you to Margaret and Anita and come back after there. Oh, there is Anita. Hello, Anita.
Hello, everyone.
Margaret, and I'm not gonna take any more time for my chatter, and as again, I just encourage everyone to write any question you can have, and we ask them at the end. So I can leave
and
it
please
to you.
Remember, Aga, about the presentation.
I will. Don't worry. Don't worry. So I'm leaving you now, and I'm gonna be in the background as a silent presentation person. Thank you, ladies.
Thanks. I have the honor of just telling you a few of Anita's impressive accomplishments. Not only is she head of art history and philosophy at Geppert Academy of Fine Art, or Art and Design, where she also holds a professorship, an assistant professorship. She holds a doctorate in art sciences, and her thesis specialized on the Polish School of Illustration from 1950 to 1980, which was a really dynamic time. Her research there culminated in the publication of a book entitled Station Illustration, and hers was the premier academic writing on the topic. You heard Anita collaborates with the Biennial of Illustration in Bratislava and a number of cultural institutions. She's also a jury member for the International Picture Book Quadriennale in Riga, Latvia, as well as many of the juries locally. She's written extensively for books, papers, and articles, not only on the subject of illustration, but also on contemporary Polish art. Now, lest ye think she be lacking in her Irish illustration department, fear not, because in 2011, Anita, accompanied by the Queen of England and the US President Barack Obama, landed on our fair shores here in Ireland. Anita had won the Trinity Longroom Hub Visiting Research Fellowship in the Arts and Humanities and decided to come over and write about children's book illustration in Ireland. So she's well familiar with our luminaries here at home. I'd like to offer a warm Céad Míle Fáilte to Anita. So work away, Mrs.
Thank you very much, Max. It was such a wonderful introduction that I don't know if it's really about me and should I be here in this place. And I do hope that Aga still holds her hand on the presentation, because this is actually what we want to see, at least at the very first moment. Yes, here we go. So, welcome again. I'm very happy and honored to be here and to be allowed to give you a short speech on the actual, well, revival, it's the word we used in the title of the meeting today. And actually, it is something about it, although the very rich and long tradition of Polish illustration seems to last over a century now. And I would also like to try to show some influences of the older tradition. But as we don't have that much time, it will be really a short review and only like few glimpses of. So the very first slide and the poster we start with, it says in English, "Watch out, bulldozers." Actually, it was the title of an exhibition held at the gallery affiliated to Warsaw Academy of Fine Arts. And the title and the very event was conceived by Professor Zygmunt Januszewski, an illustrator and cartoonist himself, who ran at that time the illustration studio at the Academy in Warsaw. And he had the feeling, he had this deep understanding that something very important is going on at in the second half of the first decade of our millennium, that more and more talented people would like to be focused on book illustration. And of course, children's book illustration seemed to be the most promising area of this sort of activity. So going back to actually much older exclamation, "Bulldozers are coming," which was, as the legend says, expressed by the lady of Polish illustration, Olga Siemaszko, probably at some time in the 1960s at the opening of one of the exhibition, presenting also the works of the debutants of those times. This very humorous and prophetic quip, as it occurred, was to sum up the situation. And this exhibition really showed many talented young artists, and among them were quite many still active till today, award-winning illustrators who has their oeuvre that we can call it very, very impressive. So to start with, Alexandra Chisleak, I made the captions because it's always easier to remember the names when we see it and not hear, especially considering quite difficult Polish pronunciation. And I don't want to give you too many details like titles and publishing houses and everything. So just to have a feeling of how different and how original actually these illustrations are. So the other name is Agata Dudek, an illustration to a story about a girl called Tiny, who actually was very, very tall, and we can see how her leg were twisted. And also, I would like to give you some pictures juxtaposed to show the tradition. As we can see, a lazy man illustrated by Wojciech Zamecznik in an anthology of very well-known Polish poet, specializing also in children's poetry, Jan Brzechwa, in the book called The Bergamuta Islands. Here is another poster, but title, which makes a reference to one of the best-known word fairy tale, which is Red Riding Hood. So you can now imagine this wolf being a table and a table turning into a very fierce beast. Is designed by Małgorzata Górowska, who was one of the participants of the exhibition Watch Out Bulldozers. And this poster is actually designed to yet another exhibition showing the works of only 4 of the illustrators discussed. Here we have an example of Monika Hanulak's double spread to Pampilio, a book to also very well known. And here is a comparison of another Pampilio version designed by Ignacy Widz in 1962, which also shows how young artists derive from this rich tradition, but still trying to keep their own expression and their own use of tools. As is quite understandable, Widz could not, even if he wanted to, or he would be able to imagine the use of digital tools, while Monika Hanulak makes a perfect use of modernity. But it is also worth to look even more back into the past, as Francisca Temerson started her career together with her husband Stefan Temerson in the beginning of the 1930s. And this was the period where they came together with many books, Stefan writing the text, and Francisca, as a graduate of the Warsaw Academy, prepared illustrations. During war, they moved to London, and till 1988, the year they both died, they lived in London, running also their own publishing house called Gabby-Bacchus Press. And another talented young person in the exhibition showed is Marta Ignerska from the book Great Dreams. And Anna Ładecka. And one more example of comparison, Wojciech Zamecznik, again, show the very energetic and dynamic use of hand drawing mixed with ready-made pictures in collage, which was very, very popular in illustration in Poland in the late 50s and the whole decade of the 1960s. You probably heard about the super duo of Polish children's book illustration, namely Aleksandra and Daniel Mizielińscy, because this is the book which seems to be the biggest success till now. Maps have been published by now in 36 languages in 40 countries, which is updated. I received the information from the publishing house, the original one, Dwie Siostry, which is an original name. In English should be Two Sisters. And the first illustration of the duo is from the book We Are From Here, which is dedicated to the universe, the astronauts, and voyages into the outer space. Maps weren't the very first book, thanks to which the Mizelinskis became popular abroad, because before 2012, which was the year of publishing the maps, they came up with house, House, because it is always in any language, it is an abbreviation connected with architecture, as the book was dedicated to contemporary architects and their designs all over the world. The second one in green was devoted to contemporary design and icons of design. The yellow one is about contemporary art, and the only one which is not designed by the couple here, of course, in the picture is MODA, which is fashion, and designed by Katarzyna Bogucka, who, by the way, was also the participant of the mentioned before exhibition. But what is probably quite well seen in the presentation up till the moment is the variety of the proposals. Some of them are a bit cartoon-like, the others are prepared with the use of collage. This one is a sort of more traditional way of illustrating books, which is drawing with very distinct contours and nice colors. And Elżbieta Murawska design, which we can see at the moment, is to Roald Dahl's book Jacob and Giant Peach, which was translated into Polish, and the book was published first in 1982. So the connections we can see on many different levels. Here is the influence of Polish folk art, and also the sort of mixing words and images, as we can see it very often in picture books, which derives also a little bit from comic books. This is designed by Marianna Oklejak, the other one here as well, and you've got the name at the bottom of the slide. And we can see how wonderfully a young artist combines the energy of rock concert and folk paper cut to show the crowds attending the gig. But once again, we have the reflection of the attitude well known before. In 1967, Adam Killian designed illustrations for the book called Oak Cradle, and he made use of the technique of painting on the glass, but also of paper cuts as well, and houses decoration. So many different ways of the expression of folk art was always a rich source for Polish illustrators. When I was thinking what would be the best idea to represent the best Polish designs, I just thought that perhaps the outer Jerez will be a sort of indication, and that's why I decided to show you the winners of Bologna book fairs, and having a really great satisfaction, as we can say that everything started just a little bit before the show, 2008, when Polish publishing house Wytwórnia had a very interesting idea to come up with totally fresh and totally avant-garde, even compared with Polish tradition, new design of anthology of poems by Tuwim, yet another famous poet specializing in children's poetry, and decided not to give the book to one illustrator only, but to 7 talented young girls who at that time, some of them were still students. So we have, as I said, now the 7 of them, but I'm showing the girls who are still active and still publish books with their illustrations. So it's Anna Niemierko, Marta Ignerska. I don't know if it's a coincidence, but we have quite a lot of birds here. Monika Hanulak. And once again, I would like to show the comparison with Młodożeniec design of 1968, which is really amazing, as the book dedicated or addressed at quite young children was designed only on typography. So we have no actual illustrations. We have only fonts, words that dance, that twist all over the book. One of the girls from Tuwim anthology was also Małgorzata Górowska, and her design to the very famous Polish poem Locomotive grew up and became a huge book. I'm saying huge because this is actually harmonica type of book, or leporello as we professionally call it, and it has an engine, locomotive, at the very beginning, which is obvious, but then it has 40 carriages presenting social, political, moral, ecological, any important issues that we deal with nowadays. So as you can see, horses going to the slaughterhouse, for example. This book was published later on in 2012, and it is worth mentioning also that it won Grand Prix of NAMI concourse, a special competition dedicated to picture books only. And here we have examples of older locomotives, which is really like a leitmotif in Polish illustration as well, by Jan Lenitza, a famous designer known for his posters and animation movies from 1958. And the one probably most popular in Poland by Jan Marcin Szancer, as he was said to be a godfather of Polish illustration, especially that he was not only artist himself, but also a professor at the Warsaw Academy, teaching illustration to young people, and a perfect organizer, art director at one of the biggest publishing houses in Poland in the decades of 50s and 60s. The chain of awards in Bologna, with only one short break in the year 2016, began in 2011 with Ivana Milevska's A House of Mind, Maum, a book which originally was published in Changbi publishing house in South Korea. But Ivana lives in Poland her whole life, although having quite an impressive cooperation with Korean publishers. This was main award, main prize in non-fiction category. In the same year, our known duo, Mizelinskis, were honorary mentioned, also in category called non-fiction, for their colorful, very humorous books on the dream jobs that children have. Next to the cover, we see a furniture tester. The same year was, as you see, very, very successful. And in opera prima category, which is for the debutants, Gabriela Cichowska was honorary mentioned for a book, A Little Elephant, or Baby Elephant. Next year, Poland, thanks to Anna Czerwińska-Rydel, the author of the text, and Marta Ignerska, illustrations, won main award in non-fiction category for the book All Tuned Up, which is a wonderful story, or maybe not that much of a story, but a trial to translate the language of music into the language of fine arts. So you can see the double spread showing the clarinet, which is always at the beginning and gives the first tone. And then quite different double spread with a apparent chaos coming from different instruments when the musicians just are doing their rehearsal and trying to tune up, as the title says. The next year was successful for Ivana Milevska again in fiction category. Her book for Korean publisher, again entitled Eyes, was well, the winner as the main prize, naturally. And as you can probably see from the picture on the right, the book has holes through which we can see eye pupils, and turning the page, it occurs that every time it's something else, we see thanks to the eyes, but our predictions about it may be misleading. And 2014, Urszula Palusińska won the main non-fiction prize in Bologna for her wonderful design of Mein Aleph Base, which is alphabet in Yiddish, also with Hebrew text and introducing Hebrew letters. So it's a sort of book for beginners who wants to learn Hebrew and Yiddish at the same time, with Polish translations. And what is interesting, it was also published by the Children's Society, and the book again was also a winner at NAMI concourse, the one I just mentioned, talking about Lokomotive by Małgorzata Górowska. The following year was special mentions, one in non-fiction category for Jan Beitlik and his activity book entitled Alpha Doodle, because Tate Gallery in London decided also to publish this book. That's why you can see double spread with English captions. And in new category, Books and Seeds, Katarzyna Bogucka with Szymon Tomiło, also for a sort of activity book, which is dedicated to all the matters connected with food, buying, growing, preparing, serving, etc., etc. So on different topics connected with one of the most essential things in our life. Yet another activity book was praised in 2017. Alexandra Chisleak was responsible for creating this book, but also she designed it as the book to be co-created. As you can see on the cover, there's a space left for the name of the owner, who will be willing to follow the artist in her wonderful trip. 2018, Joanna Concejo, who lives in France, but she studied in Poland and graduated from Poznań Academy of Fine Arts, and her beginning of the career was also connected with Poland, and she cooperates with many Polish publishers. Was honorary mentioned in fiction category for wonderful illustrations, very delicate and very detailed, to Olga Tokarczuk's short novel, The Lost Soul. And what is quite symbolical, as you know, of course, Olga Tokarczuk won the Nobel Prize in Literature for the year 2018. In the following year, Dominika Czerniak-Chojnacka in yet another category, books for toddlers, was mentioned for her original design of the book with two beginnings and two picture stories about a chimney sweep and a baker. So what you see on the right side is actually 4 different double spreads, just to show you how the story goes. And here is the actual double spread and the size of it. The beginning of work of baker who had to get up at night to prepare dough. When flour makes puff, the dough is ready and we can wait for our bread. And this year, 2020, Ivana Milevska is for the 3rd time winner of the main prize, this time in New Horizons category, with the book again for as the premiere published in Bir publishing house from South Korea. The book title is Lullaby for Grandmother. And as you can see, hopefully, from the slides, it's generally based on real artifacts, laces, and tiny organdine and fine materials that were original possessions of the artist's granny. And also her original works. And as you can see, the buttons here became grapes. This year also Ala Bancroft, which is an artistic pseudonym of Helena Stiasny, was specially mentioned in Opera Prima category for the book I Saw a Beautiful Woodpecker, which is a very touching, moving story based on a diary written by Michał Skibiński, being a small boy in summer and September of 1939, so the year when Second World War began. Bologna, this is also a place where a very important illustrators exhibition takes place. And Paweł Pawlak is the one from Polish representation that who has been there already 3 times. In 2017, with wonderful black and white illustrations to the book by Leszek Kołakowski, The Fairy Tales from Lailonia. So you can see yet another graphic proposal of very geometrical style and very rhythmical, but it also shows how different, how varied his proposals can be. And this is an example from another book, and shows the use of collage. And also typical drawing with ink, pen, and watercolors or gouache paints. These are illustrations to Arabian Nights. And here we have a very interesting idea of three-dimensional paper collage. And this is a story about Oscar, who seeks a friend. Oscar is a little skeleton, as you can see. The book has been translated into 7 languages by Antonia Lloyd-Jones, translator of Olga Tokarczuk, and Booker Prize holder as well. It was translated into English and published in 2019. As you can see from this slide, Paweł Pawlak's work here, accompanying the text by Emily Horn, was also published in many different countries, from European, as you can probably recognize the titles, but also in Thailand and Japan. Altogether, his books were translated into 25 languages, and he has more than 100 titles, or editions, we should say, of his books being published abroad. And young talent as well, Gosia Herba, who participated in Illustrators exhibition in Bologna and won also ED Awards, so for awards for graphic design. She's very consequent in using crayons, colored pencils, just like this. And again, showing one of the biggest names in the tradition of Polish illustration is Bogdan Butenko, who made use of inspirations coming directly from child's drawing, from simple shapes, and he loved to use the contrast, the most typical graphic contrast of black and white only, but also he was an expert of not only using photo montage or collage, as we can say, but also he's well known as so-called book architect, because he designed not only covers, which is quite obvious, but also the colophon, as you can see here, is the technical note about the year and about the publishing house. Piotr Socha should be also quite recognizable now, as his Bees, and the second book, which was published by Dwie Siostry, Two Sisters publishing house as well, about trees. They are also very popular, and every year they gain more new languages and new countries, which is worth mentioning perhaps here at this moment. The publishing house Two Sisters in 2018 was acknowledged as the best children's publisher, winning BOP, so Bologna Prize for the best European publisher of the year. I mean, the world publisher, actually. And again, Janusz Stanny, who was the professor who recalled the wonderful story of bulldozers coming as the change of the guard. And here are examples of his magnificent illustrations, painterly in style, but also showing some grotesque, to Andersen's Tale, traveling companion on the left and the tin soldier on the right. Many illustrators, of course, deal with fairy tales, myths, old stories, and stories from the outer, the far away continents. And Janusz Towpik was one of the masters in the decades of 1960s and 70s. But he was also talented in the area of so-called popular scientific illustration. His plates, designs were in encyclopedia or in books dedicated to different species of animals, as in the book about apes and monkeys that you can see on the right. As I said, these are only glimpses of the richness of Polish illustration, but the animals, they are here on purpose, because we will be talking about animals later on as well. So thank you. This is the end of the presentation.
Oh, thanks so much for that, Anita. That's brilliant. I love seeing all the different books, and I put up especially my a couple of selections of my Polish illustration that I quite like. So just to remind our audience that we will take some Q&A at the end of not this bit of the presentation, but after the next part of the presentation. So if something comes up, just keep a note of it or let us know through the chat box and we'll get back to you. I just wanted to address some of the benchmarks that kind of coincide back to Ireland as well. We had, I'd say, a lot of children, when they start with children's books, they're kind of imprinted by what's available when they're young, and that style stays with them throughout their adulthood. And a lot of people in Ireland and England grew up with Ladybird books. They were cheap, they were cheerful, and they were well produced. They were informative. Because I'm from America, I grew up more with Dr. Seuss. He was that bit edgier, I suppose, but again, cheap and cheerful and well produced. What was kind of the staple of the Polish child's bookshelf? You know, maybe your childhood, or you know, just mid-century and on.
Well, to tell you the truth, this is really interesting, because we also used to have such a very popular and cheap, not always well published, because of the state of printing industry on one hand, the shortage of paper and the quality of paper itself and the paints and everything. So unfortunately, it was not luxurious. No, it was rather poor in the quality of the very paper. But what is interesting, we actually had two, but one lasted much longer. It was in between 1950 till 1989, and the series till today, it still has the new publication, new editions, and it is called Read to Me, Mummy, and the books are quite thin, but I don't know if anyone counted how many different artists took part in the projects, because I would say that, well, there were, I think there were more than 300 titles in this series, more than 300. And I would risk that there were perhaps even 100 different persons involved, artists, because in the period I was doing the research, 1950, 1980, as you said before, there were about 400 artists active in the area of book illustration. So it's really amazing. And this series was so popular, and it has many editions, some of the titles. And it's really difficult to imagine that there were over 30 million copies sold altogether of this series only. Wow. And it's in comparison to contemporary times, it's really unbelievable. But the state care, we can say, about childhood, even in those crazy times of social realism, it was really something. The other series was not that very popular, though it was connected with my childhood as well, and it was Squirrel series for even younger children. And it has only 82 titles. But what I would like to stress is they were designed by wonderful artists. So even if the price was comparable to, you know, a portion of ice cream or a tram ticket or something like this, so really anyone could afford to buy them. Yeah. They were really of high artistic quality, and they were so completely varied, as the examples of illustration I showed. So some of them painterly, some of them a little bit like pop art, comic books, things like this. The others indulged in folk art, yet the others black and white, very, very simple, very geometrical. Some of them use this typography as the main mean of expression. So really everything.
I think that kind of changed with the Ladybirds. There was kind of a look, and it was that realistic look. But when Julia Donaldson came on the scene, now she's a UK writer, but when she cracked into the children's book market, she was kind of the Dr. Seuss of words, and she was very prolific. Her main kind of contemporary, or her main illustrator, was Axel Scheffler at first, but now she's kind of her publishers are taking on more and more new young illustrators, and I think she's giving that opportunity to new young illustrators like you're talking about. These are massive selling books, and thankfully she's picking out some new names. But this is quite recent. This is in the last 20 years. Is there a Polish author that everybody's looking to work with?
I wouldn't say that, because we also have many writers for children, and I would say that the offer on Polish market is so vast that there are so many different sorts of books as well. Like we have this wildlife books, we have funny stories, or more and more picture books, on also many activity books on different kinds. And some of the people specialize in categories. But what is interesting is that really popular writers, they write longer stories, so the illustrations are not that essential, or even if it's not the case of essentiality or not, the artists just they cannot show all their skills and all this force they have, so they prefer to come up with picture books, because it gives them size, it gives them
the
brief. This is the case of Mizelinski's, for example, the maps. This is their original book. I mean, they are responsible for both text and pictures. Piotr Socha cooperated with Wojciech Grajkowski just to have this merit, right? Just simply the facts from wildlife about bees and then about trees. But again, the very idea of the book was his original one, and the pictures are made by him. So this is an interesting case, because I would say that some of the artists aim at their own books, and there are of course some popular names, and what is interesting, they work in steady duos. So for example, if Justyna Bednarek is very popular thanks to a series about mysterious life of socks, which is beloved series by my son, for example, who's 11 years old. But she does this always with Daniel de la Tour, because he's the best one to illustrate. So even if there are some illustrators who would like to work with Justyna Bednarek, she works with Daniel de la Tour, right? So no, I wouldn't say that. Of course, the famous names. I think that this would be the case probably if Olga Tokarczuk again wished to write a story that can be read by young adults or even the kids. So yes, I would say that everybody in Poland, every illustrator would probably think about illustrating Olga Tokarczuk because she's a Nobel Prize winner and everybody will be willing to buy a book by her, right?
Right. Well, this is leading me on to my next question, and it was something that you touched on in your talk. It makes me think back to Lauren Child. She was a writer. She is, sorry, she's still with us. She's a writer, designer, and illustrator, and her kind of this wacky collage and this crazy typography, along with her kind of childlike voice. She was one of the first to blur the lines between picture and text and make text a part of the picture. And it was refreshing to see people, considering the holistic design with text and picture. It seems to be more well planned with Polish illustrators, that it's thought of as a whole. Like you're saying, with the maps, it was a concept for a book, not I'm going to write a book and find somebody to illustrate it. So how do you think we can encourage illustrators and writers to work more towards a happy marriage, I guess? I mean, is there a secret that the Polish seem to know that we could be let in?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say, that we do not have to encourage anyone in Poland, because this tradition of holistic, as you say, design and thinking about the book as the whole, right, as one organism, started actually in the 30s with the couple of the Temersons, because they work very close with each other and they actually created the books. So Francisca and Stefan Temersons, they also tried to teach the children in the beginning of the 30s about the new reality. So they showed the invention of electricity, central heating, these things that were completely novel at that time. How the post office is working, what is the invention of writing, and what are the social consequences of this, and so on and so forth. So the majority of their books were teaching, but they were also very avant-garde in the way of designing. So as it started so early in Poland, and then it was this wonderful continuation in the late 50s, already after the Second World War, and the 1956 was the year of debuts of the biggest names like Bogdan Butenko, Janusz Stanny, who was a professor and illustrator himself at the Warsaw Academy, and they always treated a book as one organism. So as Bogdan Butenko once said, you should treat a book as a sweater. If you just begins, you have to keep this thread throughout the whole books, because if not, it will just disappear, right? Yes. And he was the one. I was showing one illustration only because I didn't want to focus on the Polish School of Illustration, so the decades of this golden period of Polish illustration. But he was the one from among the illustrators who was even called the book architect, the book builder, we can say, right? And there were many others like Jan Młodożeniec, Henryk Tomaszewski, Wojciech and Stanisław Zamecznik. So there were quite many of them, and especially in the late 50s and early 60s, it was the whole stream of books that were designed in such a way. So nowadays, the young artists, they have no choice. They have to reflect the tradition.
Yes. Oh, I think that's brilliant. Oliver Jeffers, I'll bring him up as another one that designed and wrote and illustrated very, as the single object, as a sweater. He's now a superstar of children's books, but he started, up the north. He's living in the US now, partly because Irish publishers didn't take him on, couldn't afford to take him on, I'm not sure what, but his work was a bit too sophisticated or not suitable or too edgy for the Irish market. And it kind of drove him out. And he's proved us wrong. I don't mean to offend anybody by this, but his work was just too sophisticated, I think, for the Irish market. And we don't have, we're a very small market. We don't have a print run for us is 3,000 to 5,000, which is not a lot. So it is an investment. But are there people maybe in Poland that were too edgy and are now being embraced, or people that were misunderstood in Poland and now have found an audience elsewhere? Because I'll tell you this, I think after tonight we're going to have a lot of Irish illustrators immigrating to Poland.
Well, the market is not very easy because of so many people active in it. This is the one point. The other is also what I already said, that it wasn't a problem in Poland that something is too sophisticated graphically or too edgy, as you say, because we did have this wonderful designs and books present with us, and especially at the end of the first decade of our millennium, there were new publishing houses, so-called Lilliputian, that because they were very often one-person publishing house. They just wanted to come back to this wonderful quality of Polish children's book illustration, and they looked for new talents. But on the other hand, they started to reprint the books from the older days, and they refreshed the best designs. So they, in a way, they were active, they were present in our market almost, with the break in the late 80s and in the 90s, when we suffer from Disneyosis, right, of a horrible disease and a cheap production from Taiwan, because Poland started the transformation and we wanted to keep up with the Western world as fast as possible, forgetting about the best things we actually had. But going back to the situation of Oliver Jeffers, who is known in Poland, because I would say that at least 5 books by him were translated into Polish, and we have them here as well. And he doesn't stick out so much in Poland with his designs, so it's like welcome, right? And I wouldn't say that we happen to have a situation that illustrator had to move or had to started to work abroad. Perhaps one of these cases would be Ivana Milevska's case, because she started with quite traditional illustration to poetry, to children and young adults classics like Anne of Green Gables or The Secret Garden, and we can say she was completely unknown in Poland at that time. and thanks to, of course, a happy coincidence and many circumstances that helped, she was promoted in Korean market. And the truth is, as I showed with the Bologna prizes, that she was firstly appreciated in South Korea. She visited the country many times, but she has a family here. She works here, and she never. I don't think that she has ever thought about moving to Asia. So. This is not exactly the same the same story, but in a way, yes, she was recognized somewhere else.
We had that. We had that with Chris Houghton. Chris Houghton is an Irish illustrator that was recognized by a South Korean publisher first as well, and now, when they saw the value of his work, now he's being picked up by UK publishers, which is great. But it's sad that we didn't recognize his genius here at home in time, because we've lost him. No. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, because Poland is so well represented at the Bratislava Award and in Bologna, are these essential organizations or essential competitions to get involved in? Do you think it's kept Polish illustrators on top of the competition, keeping up with these two competitions?
Yes, I would say that the situation is different in both of the cases, because Poland was from the very beginning in Bratislava. Our one of the best-known Polish illustrators, Zbigniew Rychlicki, who is creator of the most popular Polish teddy bear, Misiu Szatek. He was even one of the organizers, actually, of the Biennale in Bratislava. So it was also quite obvious that Polish participants were at every edition till mid 80s. So exactly in the time of the People's Republic of Poland, right, till the 1989, and we won 2 Grand Prix, so it also means something. And we were present at every edition, and almost every year we have at least special mentions or golden apples or brown plaquettes, because there were many different awards at that time. And nowadays, there are, of course, Polish participants in the Biennale. I think that every edition we have some, but it is not that popular among illustrators now. They aim at Bologna, definitely, and NAMI concours when it started 6 years ago, I think. Frankfurt, well, they have an eye on White Raven selections for Munich International Youth Library, but Bratislava is not any longer the top competition. I would say that they fight to be there, because I think that something also changed in organization of the preparing the representation, the national representation. And I know something about it because in 2013, I was responsible for preparing the Polish representation. And this was the last time we had 15 people, I think, or 12 or something like this, quite an impressive number of participants. And this was the last time, because when illustrators themselves are supposed to prepare everything and to send the works there, they just say that, oh, well, okay. So, well,
we've only entered twice from Ireland. We've sent a contingent twice now to the Biennale, and we've only attended Bologna for 6 or 8 years, maybe. I'm not sure. So you think Bologna is more Bologna, Frankfurt, and what was the other one you were saying?
Nami Concord, Nami Island,
Yes.
right? This is a Korean island which is dedicated to books only, which
Yes.
is really impressive. I've never been there, but I've heard from the stories. Yeah, definitely. Polish-Irish representation will do something about it.
And here, what other conferences or competitions do we need to know about then? Is there anything else you can think of?
Well, I would say that one of quite important international competition, which is being held by Dwie Siostry, or Two Sisters Publishing House, is Clairvoyance, which is Jasnowidze in Polish, which is also dedicated for debutantes. So the people who start their careers, and the main award is, of course, the book to be published, which is also very important for the people who start their careers, and money as well. So it's really challenging for young people. We also had a very nice conference which happens every 2 years, so the format of Biennale as well, in Katowice, which is called A Book Well Designed, Let's Start from Children. And it also has a competition, and there are many publishers who come there and they select the titles, even if they are not winners, which is also nice, because sometimes a publisher can have, another eye, and the jury can select, let's say, 3 or 4 participants, and that's it. But the publisher comes and say, I know, I like this, and I will publish this. So sometimes it's even surprising, but it really works. And I would say it started in 2008. So this year was really important for the revival of Polish book illustration, because the one of the girls who was honorary mentioned there is still a very active one, and wins the awards at national and international competitions. We of course have a competition organized by Polish section of EB.
Yes.
And this is the most important Polish competition for children's and young adults books. So this one is like the most important for the people who specializes in this area of designing, and it has been now for more than 20 years.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm just aware of the time, so I wanted to ask you one more question, and then we'll probably have to stop. Although we did discuss having 7 more seminars so that we could chat a bit more. So this is my new question. There's a huge rise of immigration. There's a rise of the movement of refugees. There's also the popularity of the silent book competition in Bologna. And we're seeing more and more wordless picture books. Do you see this as a trend in Poland as well?
Yes, when I talk to illustrators, they often say that this is their dream to come up with silent book, because then they feel really as a total creator. And the creator of everything, of the story, of the pictures, the decision about the techniques, the styles, the choice of means of expression, everything. And I would say that some of them already tried this out. Ivana Milevska in some of her designs is very close to silent books, and she also cooperates with writers, but the majority of her books is one author book, right? So she's responsible for the text and pictures. Paweł Pawlak also came with a very beautiful silent book, which has, I would say, 3 words only, and of course paratext, which is like the title, colophon, and things like this. And when you talk to young creators, they really say that this is like they're really aiming at. Partly because they just don't think they are literary good enough, that they don't want to write the text because they feel that it can be not good enough, just simply. And sometimes because they want to take this challenge of telling the stories with pictures only.
Yeah, they're beautiful. Well, I'll have to stop it there because we have more to do this evening before everybody goes to bed. So I'll hand back over to Aga. And thanks a million for that, Anita. Just a reminder to the audience, if you have questions, please let us know. We'll come back at the end.
Yeah, I'm not running away.
Perfect.
Thank you, ladies. That was absolutely fascinating. Sorry, I'm looking a bit ragged because I was like really clinching to every word that you say. That it's so interesting. I'm very happy that we actually have a representative of the Polish talent with us today. So we have Aga Grandowicz with us tonight, and she will tell us quickly about her practice. I'm sorry, Aga, I'm just gonna allow you to run the presentation. Thank you for sticking with us for a bit longer. I just didn't want to interrupt Anita. It was so interesting, and Margaret, their discussion. So I'm just gonna leave it to you. If you could for a few minutes tell us about your story as an illustrator, and then we're gonna have a short discussion between all of us if there are any questions in the chat box. So I'm gonna
Yes, I agree with you, Aga. It was absolutely fascinating to listen to the presentations, and I kind of went down the memory lane. On the trip down the memory lane, I could recall so many titles, mentioned, and so many illustrators. So that they made part of my childhood, and I remember some of those books. That's really amazing, and I wish my mom kept all these books for me. So I've been asked to tell a bit about my journey through illustration. So I open a presentation. Okay, no. Okay, here we go. So I studied graphics, graphic design, graphic art, and photography, traditional photography. And as a student, I was always drawn to poster design, to cultural poster design, the type of poster that uses illustration as the kind of visual shortcut and metaphor that helps to understand what the movie or theater play is about. So that's my old examples. So the one you see on the left, at the top left, that's the type of drawing I like to play with. So very simple, very kind of rough line, very sketchy, at the same time quite joyful. And then I used to work a lot with photography. So I made, as you can see, actually all of these posters are related to film, because I was also very engaged in animation. I used to make animated movies, stop motion, and surprisingly they were winning a lot of awards at film festivals. I used to organize small, not festivals, but like short movie screenings, animation screenings. Actually, I was doing this also in Dublin when I arrived to Ireland. I did it for a few years as well. And this type of concept, where the illustrations tells a story about the film, the theater, but I like to apply the same to book cover design. So here are a few samples. Back in Poland, I used to work for a few publishers, and I designed some covers. So you can see again different styles of realistic drawing, a photograph, and very simple illustrations. I still enjoy working with very simplified illustrations, like you can see here. And this slide shows some of my quite recent posters. So I designed some of them, the top row for a theater in London, and the bottom ones, they're my personal projects. And because I like this simple illustration, this visual shortcut, I also produced a book called Book of Ideas. and it includes some illustration work, as you can see here. And now when it comes to my journey through illustration style, so I used to, at the very beginning, I used to enjoy the kind of ugly style, okay, very like primitive drawings. I used to play with paper. I like the strong color, and I was experimenting, you know, just adding pencil as well, as you can see in this picture of the two cats. So that was paper and pencils. And the illustration with the fly, the bottom right, it's one of the editorial illustration that has been commissioned by one of very well-known Polish magazines, and they commission, I know, maybe a dozen of them. So they are collages made of paper. Then I used to play with the paper when working my personal project. So that's a little children's book. So as you can see here, I was also playing with typography. So it is actually little stickers. I was sticking them to the paper, and I left them a bit up, you know, a bit lifted, so that you know, that also creates some nice effects. Okay, and then I loved kind of sketchy drawings. Like, you know, very freehand, like gestural drawings. So I was doing this quite a lot. These are some illustrations, the top ones illustrations for books. The bottom one's a mixture, like the one with the watch, that was an editorial illustration. I used to work for 2 Polish magazines when I lived in Poland. Then again, this type of illustration, that's for a book. One of the publishers I used to work with, so I created lots of illustrations for them. These ones are for a book, so that was quite a lot of them. It was a very nice job. It was a very nice client to work with. And then after trying, you know, my luck, let's say, of this type of drawing, I moved to something completely different. I like working with this kind of thin, rather delicate line and very light colors. And here's how I applied it to another set of illustrations. It was a commission for publishers. I still remember it was a very large commission. I had to draw 80 illustrations, and I had 3 days for that, and I managed. Okay, now next one, what we have here. Okay, so then I was back to the gesture drawing. So I was at that stage, I was drawing people. So you can see on the left, very simple, very sketchy artwork, then a bit more refined, playing with watercolors. I always loved watercolors. Then I moved to different paints. It's poster paints. So I quite like this, you know, surrealism of these illustrations, these crazy, silly ideas. Like, you know, I have the 2 monkeys playing badminton, and instead of the ball is the sun. There's a bird inside the carrot, giraffe eating the carrot. But I didn't like the technique used. It felt a bit dull to me, so I left that style. And I moved to something like that. So like very simple lines. That's all done in a computer. So this type of illustration, it's quite similar to my. I say it's similar to my recent poster designs. Very simplified drawings, which I still enjoy. Okay, and that was a day when I was working in the office, and one of my colleagues gave me this marker, which you see in the picture. So that was a brush marker. He brought it from Japan and gave me to try, and actually it felt so amazing. And I started drawing nature. You know, first was this little bonsai tree. And then I moved to drawing animals, and while I was doing that, suddenly all my love for nature came back to me. I remember when I was a child, I used to collect reference books about animals, and I read a lot about animals. I could talk for hours about dogs, but actually never ended. I can still do that. And I thought, what about making my own reference book? So I approached an Irish publisher with the idea for that book, and luckily they loved it straight away. So together with an amazing writer, Rob Maguire, we created this compelling, Dr. Hibernica Finch's compelling compendium of Irish animals, which became quite a success. And since then, I've been involved in wildlife illustration only. So that's one spread from the book. Another one. And one of my favorite, the toad. And that's some of my drawings from other projects. So as you can see, it's so different from the other ones, like for example from this one, okay? But I still enjoy doing both. Let's go back to this one, okay? So, and I find drawing this very intricate animals very relaxing. So when I do that, I listen to podcasts, to audiobooks. I kind of feel like I'm doing two things at the same time, which feels great. It's very effective time use, and yeah, it's really pleasant. And yeah, because I love animals, because I love nature, I decided to actually focus my future career on working on projects that would involve anything that's related to nature, biodiversity, environment. And yeah, luckily it's doing well. So here are some other drawings. Okay, and that's one of my recent illustrations. It's a series, so there'll be something coming out very soon. It's my personal project. Okay, and that's it for now. So probably in the future there'll be loads more to show.
That's great. I need to admit that I've got the Dr. Finch's at home, and I think I bought this more for myself than for my son. It's a beautiful book. Hello, ladies, again. And if anyone has a questions, please put it in chat box. I will ask that. But I've got so many questions to Aga and Anita and Max, and maybe I will start with Anita. So what is it that Poland is so good for the illustration? Is there something in the soil? Is there something in the air? Like, what do you think is the secret to so much talent coming? Like, I don't know, maybe not that usual, but it sounds like there is a lot of talent in Poland. So,
well, the tradition shows that we cannot speak only about present times and just simply the situation of nowadays, because it would be so easy to say that we have 7 academies of art, and at least 3 of them have at least 2 different studios to study illustration at. So this would be one answer, that young people who are talented, they can just simply learn about illustrations in details and then can practice, and then we have this contest, and so many really good, ambitious publishing houses who just simply want to edit books of high artistic quality. And I think that this last reason, or this element of circumstances, was really the key factor in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, because the art directors at the publishing houses were artists themselves, and they just encourage other young, sometimes their own students, like Szancer, for example, or Janusz Stanny. They just simply ask their students to come and to take a risk. And they never said that, remember, you are drawing or painting for children.
Good point.
Because it was said by many different people, but Kwieta Pacowska, a very, very famous Czech illustrator, once said that a book is a first art gallery for a child. And you just invite children to encounter with art. And you cannot just, give simple shapes. It doesn't have to be bad, but sweet colors, huge eyes and everything, because it appealed to children. Of course, if you show the children only huge eyes and puffy lips and pinky glossy papers, of course children will love this. Why not? But then if you show black and white aggressive wolves and fierce creatures, and even if the child at the very first moment makes such a thing, after a moment he or she is attracted to the book, and this was the attitude of the publishing houses during the period of People's Republic of Poland, so in the decades after the Second World War. And it once again it happened at the end of the first decade of our century, that we have to propose good, high quality, original, interesting, and also challenging illustration, because it gives so many opportunities for the parents as well, to teach children of how varied the world is.
Yeah, I definitely, as a parent myself, love the approach of not patronizing kids with the sweet, the same looking pictures. And I'm gonna go back to Anita in a second, but Aga, I wanted to ask you actually, because you obviously actually studied in Poland first. And do you feel that now when your practice is in Ireland, that what's the influence of like the Polish art school and Polish school of, the illustration? Do you feel that it is somewhere in you, or how do you feel about this? Or are you trying to maybe find your own style and be the best illustrator of Ireland, perhaps,
Definitely it's influencing, like as Anita said, in Poland, the illustrators, the book artists, they look at the book in a very holistic way. So because I'm also a designer, I think I can combine both, so I can work with both, because some illustrators, they cannot really design, they need help of others. But I think because of this, what I studied, what I learned in Poland, I can do both quite well. So that's what helps a lot.
I see the design in your work stands out. Because the book that you've shown us, the Dr. Hibernicas, it is holistically designed. Of course it is. I mean, it was all you. Well, Rob, but I mean, it was presented as an object, not just an abstract idea. It came to the publisher with a form.
Yes, exactly. Yes, we came with the initial spread, a sample spread, all designed, so they could get the immediate idea how it would look like.
I've got a couple of questions to Anita here, so maybe we start from the question for Barbara, and it's a lovely message actually, saying that it shows that, Anita, you love the books, but the question is, can you share with us your first illustration from your childhood reading? What was responsible for initiating your passion when you were a child yourself?
Well, the truth is, the question is good, but it's very, very difficult. I was quite happy as the only child, and the child who loved from the very beginning books. I was happy to have quite many of them. And it wasn't a big problem for my parents, because, as I told you, they were cheap. They were cheap and attractive. So you could buy them in so-called kiosks. with cigarettes, newspapers, all this funny stuff like the Trafika sort of shop, little shops. And almost every walk with my mom, it was like, oh, mommy, buy me a book, because there was a new title. I heard from one of the art directors later on, of course, when I was doing my research, that in 1967, only one publishing house edited 360 books in 1 year, which means that every single day a Polish child could have a new book only from one publisher, which was not the only one in Poland. So this really shows the scale. And of course, I loved Szancer, so the one I was telling as the godfather of Polish illustrators, especially Andersen's tales. When I saw Pinocchio or any, because he illustrated a lot of classics. So of course there were some illustrations that I was just looking, staring at them, and probably they made me read all these texts as well. But I love this series, Read to Me, Mommy, and I had, at least 50 of these booklets, and almost everyone was an adventure, a visual adventure of some kind. So it would be so difficult to give, like, the one and only name, but I loved Butenko. From the very beginning, he was like my star, and I was really looking for the books with his illustrations, so it didn't matter. And I remember that I was so surprised when I recognized, because this was quite easy to recognize his style, and I found in a bookshop a book with his illustrations, and was of course asking my mom, mommy, buy me this book, please. And my mom just took this, and it was a book on burnings and cold spots, like you get your fingers frosted or something, because he also worked for other publishing houses, like medical guides for people, or some psychological texts. So it wasn't a book for children at all. And but still the illustrations were so funny that my mother said, oh, okay, I will buy it for you, because the books weren't expensive at those days. So yes, I can say that I loved his illustrations so much and his pictures so much that it was like a guarantee for a book itself, even if the text was dull, stupid, and whatever, right? But still, the Butenko was the one to say that he even once illustrated a telephone directory, and he said that there was no plot but many characters.
I love his book. I remember from my childhood many of books in a way that was I guess because we didn't have that much TV, especially in communist Poland, no internet, these books were actually filling your life. I've got another question that it says it's to Anita, but maybe it's even a little bit more for Aga, being based in Ireland, just like us. But Anita, obviously, if you think, you pitch in as well. Was there or is there an interest by illustrators, writers in combining, collaborating Irish-Polish modern culture in Ireland today through children illustration or illustration in general? Curious, since there are many Polish culture weekend classes for kids in Ireland. Do we know about any Polish-Irish collaborations? Obviously, we have Aga.
I don't know.
Maybe that's a niche that we can fill in.
I don't think so.
There's this nice festival, Mother Tongues, but that's, about all the cultures. So they invite people from different cultures, ask them to run workshops for children in their languages, because there's so many different nationalities here. So then the children can come to the workshops and listen, participate in them in their mother tongue.
That's a thought, considering Ireland has so many great writers and we have so many great illustrators. So,
yes, exactly.
Sorry, Shane. No, the question was perfect. I think it's just my reading was atrocious. But it looks like we're into something interesting and new. I don't know if there's any more questions from the audience. I know that we're running over, but I feel like I don't want to finish today. So,
typing, let's see.
There is someone typing. If we're gonna take one more questions. Oh, that's from my boss saying to tweet about this event with the hashtag. Well, on that note, because we really kept everyone a bit long, but as I say, I didn't want to miss a word from your presentations. Thank you very much. It was an exceptional evening, and it looks like we might think about a couple of more ones because there is definitely many things to talk about. And thank you very much. Good night, and thank you to everyone who joined us today for bearing with us for so long. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.